friends, and welcome back to another Majora's Mask making video. I'm excited to announce that we are now up to the 18th mask of the series. For the 18th mask, I was a little concerned on which one that I would like to do. I had run out of foil, I had run out of foam clay, I hadn't really had time to kind of dash to the shops and see what I could get, but I made it happen, and I'm excited to announce that along with some of your comments, I decided the 18th mask of the series will be the Don Gero's mask. Now the Don Gero's mask is a frog mask and it's super cute. It gives you the ability to talk to frogs around the world of Termina. And the way to obtain it is by helping a hungry Goron in the mountain village. Now the way that you help him is you need to find a rock sirloin, and I remember when I played it, I had a little bit of difficulty with this part, but basically you light up all the torches within the Goron shrine and the chandelier will spin and drop and come down with the rock sirloin for the hungry Goron. It's a pretty fun mask. It's definitely a fan favorite from quite a few of you, but it is not really well requested within this mask series, so I did put it off a little bit, but I was feeling kind of confident, especially after last week where we made the Romani's mask. I felt like having the idea of using the mask base on the head and using paper and foil to sculpt it to make the cow shape, I feel like I could kind of do the same thing with the Don Gero's mask. So that is basically my plan in how I want to incorporate those details, and then I think for any of the frills or extra bits I'll either do that with foil and foam clay, or I'll just get some 2mm foam and then paint that using the spray paints that I've got and try and then just kind of glue them on. I still do have some super glue, so I am happy to be able to use that, but I am also going to maybe run to Kmart a little bit later and get some hot glue sticks, so we'll see if I can finally do that. Anyway, enough yapping. I will let you guys get to the mask making.
For the Don Gero's mask, similar to how I made the Romani's mask, I grabbed an Amazon mask base and wanted to use it more like a hat. I drew some lines on the face and used my Stanley knife to cut it out, and then covered the eye holes with masking tape. I then started to crumple up some paper and attach that with masking tape to the Amazon mask base as well, just to give it the shape that I was going for Don Gero's head. I don't really know how to describe the shape of the head, but in the end, after I had finished attaching all the paper down, it kinda looked like the top of a horseshoe crab. So if you're making that mask and it looks kinda like this is correct. The next thing that I wanted to do was crumple more paper and try and shape it into the arms. I started with the front arms because I wasn't sure how I would like the paper crumpling turning out. But once I got it to the shape that I kind of liked, I just grabbed some masking tape and started to wrap it around to hold it in place before attempting to attach those to the mask base. The hardest part was probably lining it up with the eyes, because in Majora's mask, the mask actually covers Link's eyes a little bit. I wasn't liking how it was turning out at this point, but I thought I'd keep going, so I started to crumple some more paper and try and make the hands and attach them to the front legs. They kind of sat in place and where I wanted it, but it was really hard to keep them in place and they were just not the shape that I wanted. I then wanted to move past the legs and didn't worry about the back ones, but I wanted to make as much progress as I could in the one night, so I started to ball up some paper and attach them to the top of the mask for the eyes. Now I will mention it a little bit later in the video, but the eyes were too close together. I actually did it wrong. I was using Model's Resource as a reference and it was correct. The eyes were further apart on that model. However, I would check the Model's Resource page and then use my phone to record, so I didn't have the reference up constantly, meaning that when I stuck down the eyes with masking tape, I didn't realize they were too close together. The next day, I did acquire some foil. Thankfully, Alk went and picked up some foil and some hot glue from the shops for me, so I was able to start sculpting and molding the frills. Now these go kind of like on top / behind the eyes, and there's 4 of them. So I just made 4 kind of semicircles and attached them behind the eyes. I didn't actually use any hot glue for this one, though I probably should have. It would have made things a lot more sturdy, but I just ended up using all of my masking tape. The next thing that I wanted to do was actually cut off the hands of the paper front legs that I made. Like I said, I wasn't happy with them and I thought the foil would hold better, so I started to sculpt the hands out of foil. I also used some scissors to kind of cut between the fingers just to get them as close to a hand shape as possible. Then when I was happy with those 2 shapes, I attached them to the mask base. After I was happy with the front 2 legs, I moved on to the back 2 legs. This also included making the little thigh pieces, which I just balled up a bunch of foil to make like a chicken breast size piece of foil to attach. And then I started to sculpt the legs. In the game, the back legs kind of come down below Link's chin when he wears it, so that was my goal. I wasn't too fussed about the placement, as it wasn't important like the front 2 legs, but I did want to make sure that it came under my chin. Once I was happy with the placement of those legs, I then grabbed some more foil and started to shape the fingers of the bottom legs as well. I was running out of time for this night, so the last thing that I wanted to do was cover it in foam clay. Now, like I've said in previous videos, I've had issues with foam clay, especially certain areas. When the weight of it is too heavy, it might distort the foil or weigh down a certain section. So what I wanted to do was go through with the foam clay and only cover the front of the arms and the legs and the face and eyes. I would come back and do the inside of the arms and legs later, and hopefully doing the frills later also meant that they would not be weighed down. This was quite tedious because I did have to try and roll out the foam clay before I attached it to the mask, and it was quite hard to kind of push it together once it was already placed on the mask, but I did okay. Once you do this step, make sure you cover it in water as well so it dries a lot smoother. I definitely could have left this to dry for another day or so just because I used a lot of foam clay, but I wanted to go in and, like I said, cover the inside of the arms, the legs, and top of the mask to make it more structurally sound and give myself more time to paint with details and stuff later. As you can see, while I was putting the foam clay on the inside, the outside was quite heavy and the mask was kind of falling inwards, caving inwards as I was working on it. But thankfully I could sit it up on its back legs. Once that was covered, I also added little balls to the fingers and some webbing between the fingers as well. I left that foam clay to dry for a couple of hours before going back and attempting to cover the frills. I wanted to roll out the foam clay very, very thin before attaching it to the frills because the frills were only a thin piece of foil as well. Like I said, this was a part that I was worried about for weight the most, and I still needed to add some more details to them later with foam clay, so my goal was to just make it as thin as possible. I did the outside of the frills first, let that dry for probably about an hour, and then I went back and started to cover the inside / back of the frills with more foam clay. Thankfully, because I made them quite thin, they were really, really easy to just keep up, and I was happy with how they were turning out shape-wise. The last thing that I needed to do with the foam clay was add little bumps to the frills. Now, if you looked at the reference photo earlier in the video, the frills are actually kind of bumpy. Alk said it looked more like a gecko than a frog, or some type of other lizard, and I needed to make those bumps onto the top of the frills. So that's what I did. I just kind of grabbed some foam clay, rolled them into little balls, and then pressed them flat and then put them on the edges of the frills. I definitely could have smoothed those down a lot better, but I was kind of hoping the paint would cover any bumps and mistakes that I may have made along the way. I then left that to dry, this time overnight, because the next step that I wanted to do the next day is painting. And that's what I did. The next day, when the foam was dry, or as dry as it possibly could have been overnight, I took it outside in my trusty painting box and I grabbed some green spray paint and started to paint it. Now, this green spray paint is actually from a cheap shop. It's not the same brand as the other colors that I have used on previous masks. So it was very glossy and actually hard to cover with more acrylic paint when I wanted to add the details after. As you can see, the yellow is barely coating the eyes, and I realized I would have to do so many coats of paint just to try and make it as vibrant as I could. It was also at this point in time that I noticed the eyes were too close together, because when I started to paint, I was like, wow, I miscalculated that completely. To add the details, I basically used some yellow paint, some black paint, and some red paint for the eyes. I didn't record most of the painting process because I was on the phone to my sisters during that time, but this is what it looked like mostly painted. The hardest part was probably getting the pattern symmetrical on both sides of the face, and then for extra details I added some white under the nostrils, red for the eyes, and some white spots on his back. I also added some light green between the fingers just to make them stand out a little bit from the webbing. And this is the Don Gero's mask pretty much done. Please let me know if you like how the mask turned out. Feel free to subscribe if you want to follow along with the project, and let me know in the comments which mask you would like to see next. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye!